G'day, listeners, and welcome back to a new segment on the Matter Mentality podcast. Now, previously we have done solo conversations, we've done topics of interest, we've done training strategies, nutrition strategies, business updates. We're going to continue with some of those, but something that we're going to start to do a little bit more of is some 5-10 minute podcast episodes, small snippets, small content ideas where we explore big concepts. The first one that we're going to dive into is something that we have coined the first question. And the main reason why this is important is you'll start to see how this unravels across the rest of the philosophy and business concepts we explore and dive into, that lays a foundation for what's to come, but also what's to be learnt by you as a listener. The idea of these is that you take away as much information as possible, actionable insights, things that you can go ahead and do right now, stuff that's built the foundations of the way we operate, so it makes it real. It makes it something that you can take home. It makes it something that is absolutely actionable as of tomorrow. And there's this idea that we've built that I want to explore further, and it's this idea around a moment in every person's life that I have met, I have worked with, I have seen, I've spoken to, that changes their life, that moves towards a bigger concept, that moves towards a bigger version of themselves. And it starts with a silent question. And the silent question is usually along the lines of, could I be better? That is essentially the first question. The reason why this question is so important is that we are posing a direct confrontation with an internal version of yourself that you know is not operating at your best capacity. You know that it's not operating at its full ability, and there is more for you to achieve. The simple idea is that it's not a motivational gimmick. It is not a concept that is fluff and at the surface to try and get you to do the next day's actions or to get, the next burst of impulsive inspiration to go to the gym. It is a deep underlying question that people will ask when they recognize that there is more to what they're doing. They're just not looking in the right place. That right place is internally. But once you ask that question, that's where real change can actually start to occur. The most powerful thing about it, and this is something that we like to explore and like to really push, is that it's entirely in your own control. It is entirely up to you and is your responsibility to ask the question. No one else can ask the question of you. No one else can ask the question for you. If you are ready to change, if you want to change, then you are the person that has to ask the first question. Now, there are varieties of forms of the first question, but that first foundational principle, that first foundational question is along the lines of, am I meant for more? Could I be better? Am I doing everything that I can? Is there more for me to this than what I am currently getting? These questions invoke thought, invoke curiosity, and it leads to a development of self-intrigue and curiosity about what else there is out there that you could be achieving. So really, we are defining it as the first question is the internal realization that you are capable of more. It is not to be mixed up as an external pressure from other people, from friends, from family, from social networks, from social engagement. It is an internal curiosity. This question, and what I have found across research, across time, across people, whether asked directly or indirectly in the exact words or similar phrasing, is that this question is at the fundamental shift of almost every person that has succeeded at a high level. The idea that we're trying to create here is, again, if you go back to early content from what we've done, we're not looking at creating repeat Michael Jordans. We're not looking at how do we make you Kobe or make you LeBron James. The concept is, how do we take the subconscious, ingrained, innate traits and skills that they were already doing and learn how to structure it and build it so that you can do it for yourself. That might not mean that you become Michael Jordan. It might not mean you become Andrew Johns. It might not mean that you become Michael Schumacher. But it means that you get better. It means that you're asking and starting to evoke a higher standard of yourself. And that starts with a fundamental question. The easy examples of where this can be applied is just looking around everyday life, where you see people realize, get frustrated with, recognize they know that they are not doing the absolute most with what they have. They are not getting the most out of what is available. And they're probably sick of the same repeat monotony and mundane life without any result or reward to the effort. That's the thing that makes this question so important, right? It's kind of like, for lack of better words, the Matrix version of Neo taking the red pill. Take the other pill, goes back to normal life, continues down the path, wakes up the next day in front of his computer monitor, in the cubicle, in the corporate office, repeating the same thing over and over again, knowing full well he's meant to be doing something else. This is essentially a question that is designed along that same philosophical premise. The reason why this question matters, and it's something that's going to conflict with a lot of people, and to be honest, good, because I find that favorable to the idea. I find that is reinforcing that it's correct, is once you ask the question, ignorance dies, ignorance stops being bliss. Ignorance is no longer a justifiable excuse for laziness, for lack of drive, for lack of responsibility, for lack of action, for lack of implementation, for lack of execution, really. Once you ask it, there is no going back to before that question came. Because no matter what now, once you unlock that question, once you've asked that internal self-reflection, it is now a matter of fact that you are aware of the reality that you could be doing more and you're choosing not to. Regardless of what that looks like, regardless of how that goes, regardless of where that stacks up, what more actually means to you, it might be, could I diet a little bit harder? Could I train a little bit better? Could I sleep a little bit more? Could I do my rehab a little bit better? Could I invest more time in my business? Whatever it is, you know that there is a small marginal metric that you could be even doing slightly better. Once you ask that question, you can no longer excuse it as ignorance or unaware or being unaware. And that's what makes this question so important at a fundamental level for people wanting to push to a higher degree of operation. Because you now know that the answer lies solely with you and the responsibility falls on you to execute and chase that question. Once you ask the question, it is now immediately your responsibility. The premise of the question is that you're not really getting answers, but rather demanding action of your future self. Actually demanding action of your current self. Because the previous self of you was not living at full capacity, was not executing at a high level, was not executing at the utmost level that you have. That question removes that ignorance. It removes that inability. It removes that arrogance. Now you don't have a choice. You have a choice, but if you don't act on it, really you're just accepting stagnation and you never really wanted more as much as you claimed you did. One of the things that I find most powerful about it is that it's really an initiation to absolute ownership and responsibility. Once you take the question and you ask it and you really explore it, sit with it, because that's what you'll have to do. You'll sit with this question, ask yourself at a deep level what it means. You are now responsible for everything that happens going forward, whether that be getting the result that you wanted or not, whether you put things into motion and into action or not. That immediate outcome is your responsibility. The following outcomes, the following results, the direction your life takes from that moment are still now your responsibility. Whether you choose to accept it or not is irrelevant. At this point now, you have taken accountability, and inaction is still a choice. Inaction is still a decision, and you are making a choice every single day. So for us, the way this question propositions change is that, and this goes back to a powerful psychological sort of approach to leadership, to business, to life, even to trauma, to psychological issues, and that is that you are not responsible for what happened to you. You are not always responsible for where you ended up. You're not always responsible for these horrible utmost things that went wrong towards you. Once you ask this question, or once you bring awareness to it, you are absolutely responsible for how you respond. You are absolutely responsible for how you act. You are absolutely responsible for how you solve it. If there is a problem that happened to you in childhood, you are not responsible for what was done to you, but you are now immediately responsible for the solution that you are currently aware of that exists, and you are choosing to either not engage in or choosing to follow up with. That is your choice. That is your responsibility. To us, asking this question, in my opinion, is a checkpoint in every person's life they should endeavor to reach. There should be a point, no matter what in your life, at some point where you are able to ask this question and say, am I doing everything I can? Is this all that I can achieve? Is there more to this for me than what is currently happening? Because from that, you now get to live the next version. Unfortunately, a lot of people will go through most of their life never actually having achieved, never having explored that question, not even achieved, achieves a further down the path word to use in that scenario. At present, most people aren't even experiencing what happens with that question. Now, the thing that is challenging to a lot of people is that you are going to experience discomfort. Once you ask that question, there is no more putting the veil back on. There is no more covering your eyes. There's no burying your head in the sand. It will create discomfort because there will be a certain period of reflection and acceptance that you have to recognize that you weren't previously living at your best. You weren't previously doing the most you could. You weren't previously achieving at the level that you know you could. All of that leads to discomfort, but through discomfort breeds awareness. It breeds actions. It breeds progression, and it will inevitably breed results. But if you can't sit in that discomfort, you are not going to get the outcome that you want. And no matter what, the exciting part about it is that once you ask the question, there's no going back to not knowing. It's just simply not choosing. So no matter what, you're going to be in discomfort either way. You will consistently live with the discomfort that you know you're not doing the best you can, and you're choosing to stagnate regardless. Or you will live with the discomfort of knowing that for a period of time you weren't living up to your best, and it's now time to do better. Either way, there's going to be a level of discomfort and suffering and frustration. It's what you do in that will determine the course of what comes next. But the exciting part is you realize and recognize the old way that you were living is no longer acceptable. It is no longer something that you can live with. It's no longer something that you can stand by. A new standard emerges from that question that you now hold yourself to that leads to a higher level of operation and execution. It doesn't matter if you are a bodybuilder, it doesn't matter if you're a business owner, it doesn't matter if you're a student, it doesn't matter if you're a soldier, it doesn't matter if you're a triathlete. The point to the question is that at whatever field of expertise you are going in or are currently in, you ask that question and you realize and recognize and know that there is a whole other level that you can operate at. And that's exciting because it means where you thought you may have been good, you now know you can be better. And then from that, the exciting part to me is you stop blaming. There is no one else to blame now for what happens to you. Sure, there'll be bad days that happen, there's things that go wrong, that things that conflict with your beliefs, there's things that interrupt your day, but the overall outcome is in your control because you asked a question that now places responsibility in your hands. So there is no one else to blame. From that point onwards, if you don't achieve a result, it is not someone else's fault. If you don't get to where you want to be, if you don't achieve the outcomes that you want, if you don't lose the fat that you wanted, if you don't make the income that you want to generate, these are all things that you now have to take responsibility for because you know that there is a level you can operate better at. The exciting part to it is essentially early phase exposure to extreme ownership. And that extreme ownership then puts the power of results, responsibility of life, of outcomes in your hands as something that you can mold and build. You can't control every outcome, but this is where responsibility is misunderstood by a lot of people. in adulthood, yes, you're not responsible for everything that happened to you as a child. There are a lot of things that you're responsible for that happened to you that you played some role in. When people start to look at blaming others because they did something stupid when drunk out at night, clubbing, partying, being absolutely intoxicated and barely able to walk, well, yes, something bad to you shouldn't happen because you're simply doing that. However, you are less likely to experience those situations and that risk if you are not simply blackout drunk, blind in a side alley or a side street, and no one knows where you are. The risk factors are still falling on you for creating that scenario in the first place. That's where ownership becomes so important. The version of you that succeeds, the version of you that gets to the next level, recognizes that that's a dumb thing to do. I'm now going to take responsibility for that and not do it again. The version of you that goes out on Sunday night, wakes up, doesn't have their food prepared, their meals prepared, their training ready, their clothes ready to go, their week planned out because they wasted their Sunday and are now hungover Monday morning. Yeah, you aren't a bad person for doing that, but the results that you didn't get are directly your fault. You have to take ownership of the decisions that you made. So yes, there was social pressure from friends. Old friends wanted you to come do things. New friends wanted you to come do things. That's fantastic. You told me you wanted to achieve X. Well, now, currently, when tested, you decided to go with Y and conflicted and failed to take accountability of your choices. Well, now you have to take ownership of that as well. Again, though, looking at what's exciting about this and where that leads in the future is you take full ownership and awareness of those decisions and choices. So it leads to a very pivotal life-changing position and mindset because you start to recognize in all aspects of life that you can be living better. You can be doing more, you can achieve more, you can be living at a high level of operation. The question then is, how do you use it? It's not something that you just throw out and just simply state without meaning or intentionality or purpose. Purpose is literally one of our key values that matter for a reason. It's something that you should be asking yourself. It's something that you should really sit with the first time that you ask it as a deep explorative exercise. Look in the areas of your life where you know you aren't. Look in the areas of your life that you try to succeed in. Look at the areas of your life where you're trying to improve, or where results haven't occurred, or where you haven't got where you want it to be, or when you're feeling misaligned with friendship circles, social circles that are no longer doing the things that you think you want to do. There is something that happens for pretty much every person I've discussed this with that led to that sort of question, almost like a catalyst moment for them to explore it. So I would strongly suggest when doing so, you use it with the intention to explore and then you use it ongoing as a tool. Every week, every Monday, the start of a new week, the end of a good week, the end of a bad week, on a Sunday, on a Monday, it doesn't matter. You are asking, am I living up to the best that I can? Is this aligned with the person that I want to be, that I need to become, that I want to become? Is this aligned with the person that I set out to reach and the goals that I aim to achieve? Then the first question becomes a repeat question for auditing and self-exploration. And now you're reviewing this consistently to continually improve at a high level. So this is what makes it so important. And that is that once you ask the question, the realization is that your excuses stop. Expire is probably an even better word. Once you ask that question, there is nothing else anymore except ownership and responsibility. And yeah, you'll get lifestyle and mindset coaches tell you about how it's not always your fault and these things aren't your problems and life's out to get you, and that's great. You can play by that card if you want. You can play by that game if you wish to. But loathing and self-pity whilst actively working against the things you want doesn't stack up towards a win. So no matter what, there is a degree of responsibility and ownership that you can take to succeed. If you don't do that, then you never have a chance. At least if you take that level of responsibility after the fact and after the question, you put yourself in the ballpark of winning. The best part about this first episode, this new route of philosophical questions, of exploring our business approaches, of exploring and discussing leadership, is you've already asked the first question, or you wouldn't be listening to this right now. Now, all you have to do from this is continue to the next one that comes out, continue to the next thing comes out, put them into action. It's now a chance to prove that you are actually wanting to achieve it. You've asked the question. You've asked, am I meant for more? Can I do more than this? Am I better than this? Once you ask that question, which you now have, otherwise, again, you wouldn't be here listening to me speak about it. You know, deep down, you've probably heard this question once or twice from yourself. You now have to prove it. That's it. It's as simple as that. That is the point of the first question. There's a point of what the first question means. It's the point of the philosophical exercise. I don't know who else has coined this. I don't know who else has used this before. I don't know who else has framed it in such a way. But the amount of people that I've spoken to or discussed this or studied that have some sort of level of thinking around this similar to myself, I'm sure it's happened somewhere. But the way we structured it, the way that I have noticed it, it's an evoking question from a catalyst or traumatic type experience where you start to internalize and think. I want to give people that experience without the traumatic stimulus first. So that is where the question is. And I'm going to leave that with you. You can comment on it. You can message us about it. You can just sit there and ask it. But again, once you ask, that is it. There is no going back. There is no playing small. There is no soft cocking it. There is no passing the buck. There is no passing the blame. There is no passing responsibility. It all rests on your hands. That's it. So with that, I'm going to leave you with those questions, those statements. And we're going to continue these going forward. A lot more episodes around this sort of stuff, shorter, smaller episodes around training, nutrition, philosophy, psychology, business, leadership, ownership, all of the ships that will help you guys grow, learn, improve, follow along with us, understand how we do it, view our approaches, and hopefully take something from it. So, yeah, that is it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, please reach out and message us, and we'll get back to them.